for downloading this episode of Cork Talk with me, Tim Atkin. A weekly conversation with some of the most famous people in the world of wine. Tom Gilbey's family have worked in the wine and spirits trade since the mid-19th century. They had a famous gin brand, as well as owning a Bordeaux chateau. So it's natural that he'd follow in their footsteps. In his time, he's been a winemaker, a merchant, and more recently an educator, wine writer, and internet sensation, thanks to a dip in an ice bath and the decision to run the London Marathon, blind tasting 25 wines along the way. Hi, Tom. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Tim. Thrilled to be here.
You're not so far away from me, actually. You're in Putney, aren't you? Think down the road.
I know, Tim. We could have done this in person.
Over a pint, I think, don't you? Find a local pub, lots of those. Listen, so much to talk about you, about running, about the family history. But let's begin with a bit of that family history, the Gilbeys. So the famous name, really. Researching this project, you sent me some stuff, and their association with wine goes back to the 1850s at least. Tell us a bit about Walter and Alfred Gilbey. They sounded rather interesting. Crimean War, all sorts of stuff, right?
Yeah, so they're a little bit like me. They were two complete nobodies, except they made something of their life. And they came back from the Crimean War, and I've read about this a lot, but they literally set up a 6-foot trestle table on Oxford Street, flogging South African Chablis, and made a big business out of it, and then got their brother, who was actually working in wine, a guy called Henry Parry, and then made this incredible business that I'm sure you'll ask me about. And I'll tell you what happened to it. So that's basically it.
Yeah, because they basically went where the wine was cheapest, wasn't it? And at that point, it was South Africa. I mean, plus ça change, really, in a way. Don't you think?
I know. We're back to square one.
Yeah.
Yeah, they went where the wine was cheapest, and then pivoted when Disraeli changed the duty laws. Yeah. They were very quick to suddenly switch allegiance to France, and then started everything French, and ended up with the first, I think, of the one of the big wine brands, Le Pied d'Or, which was
they did Le Pied d'Or.
They did Le Pied d'Or. Absolutely.
I heard that Le Pied d'Or was actually invented by somebody who'd put red food dye into a sweet white wine and served it to consumers in taste tests. Is that an urban myth?
It probably tasted a bit better than Le Pied d'Or. So maybe, Tim, you might be one step ahead of me.
But their business grew into this amazing empire, and it was gin as well. Famous gin brand. They bought a chateau in Bordeaux, Louden, 1875. The eponymous gin, and they had this amazing 20-acre site in Camden Town. It was half of Camden Town, wasn't it?
Honestly, Tim, I keep trying to tell my kids that this is actually something that was really amazing. They couldn't give two hoots about it. But it was, they bought this Chateau Louden, which I think in our world is very famous for entertaining all sorts. I've read the most wonderful book, Tim. Have you read Wine and War?
Yes, I have.
Okay, such a great book. Yeah. Chateau Louden was a whorehouse.
For the Germans?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So that's my claim to fame. But before and after that, it was a big thing in our trade. But they used to, I believe Gilbey's used to ship in barrel over to Chateau Louden, roll down onto the Gironde and bottle in the Camden Roundhouse, what is now the Camden Roundhouse. So if you go and see a concert in Camden Roundhouse, they've got little billboards of the old Gilbey's cellars and the bottling plants. And then before trains, obviously it was all horse and cart, and everything was just dragged out of the Camden locks by horse and cart.
And I didn't know till you sent me this stuff that the Roundhouse was where they turned the trains around.
Yes, yeah? Indeed. Yeah, indeed. It's
the things you learn. Yeah.
The things you learn, eh?
I mean, Gilbey's became part of IDV, International Distillers and Vintners. And then, as you put it to me one time, somebody bollocks it all up and I had to go and get a proper job. So what happened to this amazing empire? The 20-acre site in Camden Town and all of that?
Do you know what, Tim? I am dying to find out.
You don't know?
So my grandfather was the last chairman of Gilbey's, as Gilbey's was. But then Gilbey's merged with Watney's to create IDV, Independent Distillers and Vintners, that basically became Grand Met. And I think everyone I speak to goes, well, Gilbey, it's clogs to clogs, isn't it? There we go. So, and someone... And I hate to point the finger at my grandfather, but he may be one of few who probably didn't do quite as much work as they could have done. And our industry moves; it moves on. And there's very few businesses. I mean, we can think of a few that have run the test of time.
Well, especially family businesses, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, I just want to quickly go back to the whorehouse. I mean, were the Gilbeys there at the time? And did the Germans kick them out? I presume they'd left, had they, once the invasion happened?
Yeah, no. The Gilbeys had left, and then yes, it became a house of disrepute.
I mean, were you always going to go into the booze trade? I mean, I know one of your lovely lines is that somebody cut you, you'd bleed wine. I mean, were you brought up as a kid drinking wine or gin?
Well, I was, because my dad was the last. He worked for IDV and then got a letter saying, "Dear number 162, please report to." And he said, "No, I've had enough, finished." So he became a chef. So he started a wine bar in 1974, the Eton Wine Bar, that's now Gilbey's. And he did that with his uncle and my mum and my aunt, and he imported all his own wine from France, and so he used to do the Beaujolais Nouveau run. So me, age 12, I remember being taken age 14 on the Beaujolais Nouveau run. It's just like absolute madness.
It was a big deal in those days, wasn't it? I mean,
huge deal.
I did a piece for the Guardian where I actually came back in a truck overnight and slept in the car park in Calais. I mean, that's how big a deal it was,
It was massive, and so to have a wine bar and doing that. So anyway, I was pretty much a combination of always having been brought up in it, and being utterly useless and fairly not applying myself particularly brilliantly at exams. I thought, well, this let's have a go at this.
And did you go to uni or not?
Yeah, I went to uni, and I went to what was then Oxford Poly, and I studied history and geography, and I convinced my tutor, this is in 93, that it would be a good idea for me to write my dissertation on the history of English wine and its potential with global warming, which was, I read it now, Tim, I read it now, and I actually think I might have been a genius.
You were ahead of your time.
So it was very funny, but I used to go in my little Morris Minor in 1993 around the vineyards of Kent, Lamberhurst, visiting people like David Cartaylor, who sadly is no longer around, and all these amazingly mad people growing Sèvres Blanc, Reichensteiner, all this, trying to convince them that it would be it's all come true.
It's amazing, isn't it? I mean, I remember, again, I think it was pretty much 89, going to see John Warrencheck at Thames Valley Vineyards. And I think he was the first person who'd ever come in from another country, he's Australian, who'd come into England. I mean, the idea of a flying winemaker would come to England was fanciful at the time, wasn't it? I mean, it really was.
Yeah. Well, he was my first boss. I went to work for him. Utterly terrifying man, but really fun.
We're going to get on to him in a minute. Your dad was a chef, wasn't he? And running a wine bar. Were you a foodie as well as a kid?
I think probably more of a winey than a foodie. And by a winey, I mean really trying to get a drink behind the bike sheds that sort of progressed to wine. I'd love to say my dad was an incredible chef. He was an incredible producer of quite a lot of food for hungry and thirsty people. So, he literally started it with 4 dishes on: lasagna, spag bol, and something else.
Scampi in the basket or something.
It was, glass of Chablis, glass of Beaujolais, a bit of lasagna, and that was when it was in its heyday, and great fun. So I love food. I wouldn't call myself a great foodie, but I love wine.
Let's go back to Thames Valley Vineyards in Berkshire and John Warrencheck, Ukrainian origin, but brought up in Australia. I met John when he was working at Penfolds years ago, known him for years.
Goodness.
What was your role? I mean, how did you get a job with John?
So I rocked up to. So I'd been to interview his boss, owner, who was also called John
Layton. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And then I thought, I want to go and study winemaking. So I applied I sort of thought, I'm going to go to Roseworthy, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And then I'm not nearly brave enough. So I went to Plumpton when it was literally a shed run by Chris Foss. It's now much more than a shed. So I thought I'd go to Plumpton and work for John and live at home, because John was paying me all of $9,000. And what I did
for him was a lot in those days.
It was a huge amount of money. So I applied for the job, and he literally said, "Why?" No expletives, but he used them. "Why on earth are you going to come and work for me? Come on, you've got a degree." And I basically babysat Thames Valley vineyards while he was jetting around making sort of Merlot for Tesco's in Brazil. But
so you didn't get to go with him then on these sort of glamorous trips?
Oh gosh, no. Tom, here's a bucket of caustic soda and scrub out those tanks, and I want them gleaming, but I'll be back Wednesday.
Doesn't sound like a lot of fun, but you were learning, right?
I learned so much, and I was there, and he was making these. Him being a gregarious Australian there was lots of oak barrels. Lots of Reichensteiner being put into oak barrels, which I thought at the time, this is an amazing flavored thing. It's something that you and I would drink now and go, my goodness. I mean, what a way we've come as a nation for making wine.
I mean, but that was on the cusp of change, really, wasn't it? I mean, you said you'd seen the potential when you were doing your dissertation, and Thames Valley was kind of in the vanguard of all of that, wasn't it?
Yeah, but it was still everywhere. It's fascinating because Nightemper had only just started, and so they were the first people growing a grape that any of us had heard of, and everyone else I was visiting would it was all Müller-Thurgau, Reichensteiner, Seyval Blanc, and these wines that were we just wouldn't drink them now. We just wouldn't drink them
because of the acidity levels.
Oh, well, the acidity is very high, but they had no character. I mean, Tim,
crap grapes, yeah.
Yes, it's just and John, dear John, if you're listening to this is like you and I. We did this together, but we're putting this stuff in oak barrels and calling it Fumé Blanc. It's like Fumé what?
So how did you go from winemaking or scrubbing out these tanks with caustic soda and working presses to the retail world? Because that was the next phase of your career, really, wasn't it? I mean, you're kind of going back to what Walter and Alfred were doing. I mean, you weren't standing in Oxford Street flogging wine from South Africa, but you started selling wine, right?
No, so I did that for 2 years, and then I thought, hang on, my hands are getting quite raw here. This caustic soda thing isn't great. And so I left the trade for a year and a half and did a sales job. And I got given a white Ford Escort and Slough trading estate. And my mum bought me a pinstripe suit and a brown leather briefcase.
What were you selling?
Yeah, absolutely class.
What were you selling? Not wine?
No. I was flogging couriers. So something like Parcel Force or CityLink. They were called Interlink Express. So I'd go and see some welding company and talk to Gary, and he'd gob in my tea, and we'd get the contract. And but I learned so much. And then Tim, just shut me off. I'm too boring. But I then thought I have to get back into the wine trade because my wife Beth was pregnant with Freddie, who now works for me. And I went to all these interviews. I'm not going to say where I went for an interview, but the first question the interviewer asked me was, do I have a private income? And I just went, are you absolutely serious? I mean, like what? I'd been, I was age 24, earning 35 grand a year in a white Ford Escort. I thought I was the nuts.
The dog.
Yeah, exactly. But then I went to work for a character who I know you'll know as Jack Scott at Jascott, which was almost as crazy as working for John Warrenshak, but great fun.
I love it. So you didn't get a Ford Escort then? Did you get a new white car or not when you went to work?
I didn't even get a mobile phone. I'd been used to car phones and Ford Escorts, and instead I got a wine list that was printed on 2 sheets of A4, a bottle of Jean-Paul Paquet's Macon Fuisse, and told to just go out and pound the streets and see what you can sell.
So you were out there flogging the booze, yeah?
Yes, I did, and the first tip was go and buy a yellow pages of public limited companies in London and just sell wine to the dining rooms. And at that time, people were still drinking at lunch. There was quite a good market for that.
I mean, there's a famous Cliff Robertson story, you probably know this, where I think somebody turned up who said, hello, Mr. Robertson, I'm here on the first day as a salesperson. He said, took him out the front of the shop and said, look to your left, son. And he said, yes. And he said, that's London. He said, and here's an A to Z. Now fuck off and sell some booze.
That's exactly right.
That was kind of you, was it?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, it's exactly right. Gosh, they don't make that like with him anymore.
So did you become a partner in Jaskets or not? I mean, you did, didn't you? You kind of rose through the ranks.
Yes, I did. Yeah, I had a really fun time. Jack and I had built a business that, oh gosh, we were turning over about 9 million quid. It's very difficult though to make a wholesale business work unless you get to about 20 million quid turnover, and that's and trying to do that, I think you really need some properly good agencies, some properly good products that people really want. And we just sort of hit a little bit of a wall that was difficult to get past, and but really well, and had a lot of fun.
But then you set up the Vintner, which is your own business.
Yes, I set up the Vintner, and that was doing a similar kind of thing, but really with a limited number of wines, and we had a great run at that. That was 10 years, and then COVID hit, and I thought that this was a chance to change, and so I just put the parachute on and jumped. Sold the business to the guys at Ellis, who've done a great job with it. And
they're very good, yeah.
They're and they're perfect for them because we were the same kind of market. They had all the infrastructure and the wines to do it, and it just worked. It worked well. In fact, a little story. I'd seen James 2 years beforehand, James Ellis, and said he'd sort of nearly done a deal. And I phoned him 2 years later, just when COVID hit, and I said, "You know that business you really liked 2 years ago? You're not going to like it now. Should we do a deal?" And he said, "Yeah."
And then you went on to set up Tom Gilbey Limited, which is an events company. I mean, pre-pandemic or post-pandemic, or in the middle of the pandemic, was it?
It was just in the middle of the pandemic. Yeah, it was in the middle of the pandemic, and we'd set up because we'd begun to do a few online wine tastings, and then I thought that, rather foolishly, that the pandemic would last for an awfully long time, and we'd have this great business doing this, and it's the most profitable, brilliant business that I've ever had, but it did only last 6 months. So, but it was I'd got all our winemakers to bottle half bottles of everything, and we did a deal with a cheese shop in the Northcote Road, and we were putting hampers together, and it's a corporate events business, so all these corporates who had marketing budgets to spend needed to spend it, so they'd move to they'd invite their clients for a little get together. I'd send the drinks around, and we'd have a little screen time, 25, 40, up to 300 people.
And you'd appear on Zoom with them drinking the same wines as you were.
I'd appear on Zoom, give them a wave, and we'd do a tasting and a couple of questions, bit of fun. It was great.
Yeah, but you're still running events now, aren't you? I mean, people can hire you if they want to.
Yes, I do that, and this is busy time. Really, it's November. It's quite busy.
I mean, have the events changed since you went viral, if I may say that? I mean, since you had this kind of moment of fame, glory?
Well, I've had yes, it's been the most extraordinary journey, because I'm like any of us. We all work quite hard trying to do our own bit in the wine trade, be it writing, be it selling, be it buying, or however for. And then suddenly I jump in an ice bath and run a marathon, and my whole world's sort of changed a bit. And I go to do an event now, and people go, "Can I have a selfie?" And I'm going, "Really?"
So tell us, how did the idea of doing videos on Instagram come about? I mean, that came before the ice bath, didn't it? I mean, you have an ice bath every day anyway, don't you? I think, and you just appeared in one.
Yes, no. But the video started in January. So January
this year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Freddie has worked for me for a couple of years, and if you'd have asked me what he does a year ago, I'd have said generally he runs around with a dustpan and brush and tries to just clear my mess up. But if you ask me now, I couldn't possibly operate without him. We sat down in January, and as we all know, January is not a great time for selling booze, and January is not a great time for entertaining and doing big drinks parties. So he said, "Well, Dad, it's cold next week. Why don't we jump in the ice bath with a bottle of Kumu River, and you can do what temperature to taste Pinot Gris?" So we did, and he posted it, and it got a few likes, and then off we went.
And why did that take off, do you think? I mean, you're good at it, obviously, but I mean, did you surprise yourself at how good you were at it?
Well, Tim, it surprised me that people liked it, really. You know, I thought people liked good-looking people doing really lovely, beautiful things on camera rather than some nutcase in a red hat jumping in a cold bath. But it was, it's fun.
And why did they pick up on it, do you think? Just because it was fun? Bit crazy?
I think it's fun. I think it's fun, Tim, and everything we've done going forward from that is rather I mean, there's many more people, one of whom I'm talking to, who knows a great deal more about wine than me, but I think it's talking to people who don't really even mind that there's a bottle of wine in the video. It's just there just happens to be a bottle of wine in the video. So I think it's the fun.
So you could be talking about anything in a way. You could be talking about, I don't know.
I think so, but I am talking about something that I really love, and maybe that comes across.
Yeah.
And I think and it's a prop. You know, it's something. Yeah. What can we do with a bottle of wine? Yeah. Really.
Yeah. And then came the marathon, right? Were you already a marathon runner before you did the marathon this year?
I'd say no, really, because I last did one in '96, which was
right. Okay. So you'd actually done one before.
Yes, I'd done two before, but both in '96. And Fred said, you know, the whole thing was I had to raise money for the hospice that looked after my mum. So Fred said, well, you know, Dad, you're 52, mate. You're not going to win it. So should we have some fun? and said, well, why don't I get my mates around the course to do some blind tasting? And I said, well, yeah, let's do like 4 wines. And he goes, no, I think we should do 26. Okay, so we'll do 26. And then he said, and I'll get some people to video it, and then I might just see whether we've got any footage that's fun, and we just see whether we do a video on it. And so the point being, by the end of the week that we put the video out, we'd got 35 grand sponsorship from literally 2 grand. So it was just incredible the amount we managed to raise, and there was sponsorship, you know, in all currencies, like Vietnamese, whatever they have, and 5 of these, 10 of these, and all sorts of languages on the Just Giving page that I think generally translated as probably "you're a twat," but thanks for making it.
Good on you. And how many of the 26 did you get right?
Well, I had to get the grape, the year, and the country. Yeah. I got 4 completely right.
Yeah.
7 completely wrong, and then the rest something right, either the year or the country or the.
That's pretty good when you're in the middle of a marathon as well. It's pretty knackering, isn't it?
I thought it was pretty good. And I was running alongside a double hump camel, Blackpool Tower, and a guy with a fridge on his back. And
did you beat them?
Yeah, they do. So they'd look at me as if I'm complete nutcase, and of course I know that they do this in Bordeaux every year. It's not mad at all. Yeah. And I'm looking at them going, no, you guys are the nutcases.
And whose idea were the wine wanker signs at each of the stops?
Freddie. So he got the flags posted, because now at the marathon it's literally 4 or 5 deep all the way through. So yeah. Me trying to find anybody with a glass of wine there's no chance. And so everyone had a wine wanker flag that they'd hoist out, so I could see it up there, and then their wine wanker t-shirts. And I would try and get them, but sometimes I'd miss them. So Freddie would relocate them. So sometimes I'd do like 4 miles without a wine, and then 4 wines, and then 1 mile and 1 wine, and so. Yeah.
And what was your time? I mean, anything under 5 hours would have been good, I reckon.
Well, Tim, I think anything would have been great. Somehow it was 4 hours and 4 minutes, which is, I think, quite remarkable, really. I can't quite believe it.
And 26 glasses of wine?
25, actually, because Fred said he'd meet me at the end. And I phoned him and said, where are you? He said, I've gone home. I go, so
bastard.
So, exactly.
And that video of your exploits had 4 million views, I think, didn't it?
Yeah, it was incredible, Tim. It's the first. I had no idea what going viral was, but I think this was it, because the video went out on Monday lunchtime. Freddie showed it to me, and I said, "That's too stupid. You can't possibly post that." And he went, "Well, the problem is I just have." And so I said, "Well, let's leave it." And then on Tuesday morning, a friend texted me and said, "You're on Craig James. You're on Radio 1." And then my phone just went mad with all these numbers from people like The Sun, The Telegraph, The Guardian, all this. Will you do an interview? So it's I think, Tim, it's my Eddie the Eagle moment. And someone one day will make a lot of money out of it.
Maybe there'll be a film of it, do you think?
Maybe. I think someone could make a great film of it long after I'm dead.
Who would play you? Who would you like to play you?
Oh, my goodness gracious. Great question. Gosh, someone really funny. I think Will Farrell can pay me.
Will Farrell can do it. And since then, you've built up this huge following, social media, Instagram particularly, but also TikTok. Just who is your audience in a way? Who are you aiming at when you're doing these videos?
I think I'm aiming at my 27-year-old self, because honestly, Tim, I grew up as you will have done, reading Hugh Johnson, Oz Clarke, all these amazing Jancis and wonderful wine books and people, great communicators. And I was just really into that. And I want 27-year-olds to just get the bug. That's all I want them to do, is get the bug. And someone came up to me actually the other day and said, "Gosh, are you so and so?" And I went, "Yeah, I'm that guy." And she went, "I'm never done wine before. I've never done wine. I had my first wine the other day with lemonade." And I went, "Okay, well, great." She goes, "I want to know, what shall I have if I want to lose the lemonade and it's a white wine?" So she must have been about 26. She was black and she didn't drink wine. And I thought, that is just so brilliant that she's come up to me somehow or other. This 52-year-old posh nutcase is communicating with this amazing woman who is now drinking Moselle Riesling.
Or if you could put it onto a Moscato d'Asti or something like that.
Yes, exactly. That was probably Tim. I missed the first step on the ladder. Yeah. Exactly.
No, but I think you're right in that people now are probably not going to read wine books. You have to be pretty serious and doing exams and all that stuff. Maybe in the wine trade. I mean, to sit down and read a wine book as we did, they're not going to do it. People don't have the attention span. They're going to engage much more with the sort of thing you're doing. I mean, I think you're really changing wine communication, and people love it, and you can see why they love it, because it's speaking to them in a language they understand. Is that it, do you think?
Well, I hope so, Tim. And I really sort of think that I'm doing a job that just gets people interested. And then there's all of us who can actually, well, I say all of us, all of the great wine communicators who can teach people more. And there's so many wonderful books written by our trade, but we just need to get them interested. And I get really sad where we all talk to each other about how wine is becoming less and less of a relevant topic. And you and I will go and drink things like the bottle you've given me here, which are extremely interesting and extraordinary drinks that 99% of the world really couldn't give two hoots about. But let's just get them on the ladder. Yeah.
And tell us how you decide which subjects to cover, and which have been the most fun to do. And I think fun is kind of is the key word here. You always look as if you're having a laugh.
Yeah. Quite simply, Tim, does this subject interest me and make me laugh? Does this subject interest me, and can I do something that will make me laugh? And then we'll do it.
Which have been the most fun ones to do? Because you're quite rude about wine sometimes, aren't you? And we'll talk about, influencers in a minute and how they work. But, you're not afraid to say, this is really horrible. It's one of the worst things I've ever had. I mean, that rosé, poor old Echo Falls. And unfortunately, you said it was South African. It's from California, man.
No, this one was South Africa. No, do you know what? One thing, Tim, that I really, really will get upset about, and I do, and I will make mistakes, but the two things that really, really I fear massively is being factually incorrect. Because if you don't like something and I don't like something, that's up to us. But being factually incorrect really sends me into a flat spin.
So Echo Falls has gone global, has it? It's got branched out from California to South Africa.
I have a in front of me, but I do check things quite regularly.
I believe you. Yeah.
And then actually, I've done 2 really big slip-ups that I'm really upset about. One is upset a Welsh winemaker who's trying terribly hard to make great wine, and something else. And so actually, I really don't want to do a disservice to a family or an individual or a small business that's trying to do great stuff. I think the jam sheds can they can
deal with it.
The accolades can hack it, but I think we all try very hard to do a good job, and the last thing I'd like to do is.
Which have been the most fun to do? You say, are they the ones where you're slagging people off in a way?
No. The most fun things to do are just the. I think probably the Don Melchior's Cabernet was quite fun to do. You just imagine what you could do with this, and you pretend to take a telephone call and then throw the phone away. And it's just how can we create something that's quite fun? But generally, what I think is going to be really good is doesn't get as many hits, laughs, whatever it is.
That's interesting. Yeah.
And the most unusual things will take off.
Yeah. I mean, you say you're making it up as you go along, but you wear your knowledge lightly. I mean, people can hear from the podcast that you've been in and around, wine all your life, really. And you're doing the Master of Wine exam as well, aren't you?
No, do you know what, Tim? I embarked on the Master of Wine. I passed stage 1 and then I thought, I'm going to take a break, and I've taken a long break. And I know I'm talking to a Master of Wine, and it is the most extraordinary amount of work. I mean, extraordinary. And I don't consider myself an academic. And I think really I found my sweet spot of, I hope I'm able to hold my own in a conversation amongst people who know a lot about wine. Yeah. And so I'm happy where I am. But I've had a window into the world of what is the Master of Wine, and my goodness, I have ultimate respect for.
And you've now closed it, have you?
Yes, absolutely, I have.
You've bolted it shut, right? And it's interesting that you don't do, and you put this in capital letters on your Instagram account, paid promotions, right? What do you think of the influencer culture? I mean, I always wonder with influencers whose interest they're serving. Do you have views on that?
Well, I've always had a business that has been my, I try to make money through my business. So this is very much just something I do for fun, really. But it's happened to have quite a big effect on the business. So I just think if you can't be really genuine, and I want, then what's the point? So I really don't ever want to do anything for a paid promotion, or if I do, I'll be quite rude about it and be very, I'm going to have to promote a book soon, but my goodness, it's going to be very hilarious the way I promote that book.
I remember years ago this, I was writing in The Guardian and I did a piece about rosés, staple sort of wine column stuff. And I was very rude about Rosé d'Anjou and said, I don't see the point of this. Rosé d'Anjou, why would you want a sweet rosé, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, they'd advertised on the page, complete chance. And I was quite proud of that because it proved that I wasn't doing anything for cash. I was not being influenced by the paper.
And then you'll be so much more respected. That's people will really. I think to get a genuine following, that's surely the way you've got to be.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I always think with influence, I look at it and I think, well, are you saying that because you believe it, or because somebody's paid you to say it? And it's difficult to know, I suppose, isn't it?
And there's many of the influence. So I've actually had a look at who are the sort of influencers or who got the big following on in our I just look at Instagram really, but there's many in America. There's quite a few in America who are hovering on the sort of 50 to 100,000 Instagram followers, which is quite a lot of Instagram followers, and they are generally promoting. A lot of it is paid promotions for wineries and for and looking very beautiful and very attractive, as in not the people but the settings, and it's just. I think it's going to be very hard for them to push through into being like 1 million, 2 million Instagram followers if people are thinking, well, you're not. What I try to do is give people exactly what I think. What I think of this wine. If you like what I like, then follow. If you don't, then don't
unfollow.
Yeah, unfollow.
We've both brought along a bottle of wine that we're going to taste in a minute. But before we get into the wines that we've brought, just tell us what you drink at home. And do you have a cellar? Anything you collect that would surprise people?
Well, my cellar is a little bit like a cobbler's shoe cupboard. It's if I'm running an event, I'll just nick 5 bottles out of it, and if I've got a bottle left at the event, it will go back into the cellar. So it's a hodgepodge of all sorts of things. But I have what I really am having a problem with is wine that is lacking life. So I've got quite a lot of wine that I just think is too old. And it's just not really exciting me, and I wonder if that's something that we're all beginning to think of. Actually, I like to drink wine on the way up rather than the way down.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, I'm a founder member of something called the DIY Club, which is Drink It Young. So I'm going to co-opt you as a member. I think we can have you in there. I think you generally like what old wines can be amazing. Some of my great experiences being old wines. But you're right. More often than not, you taste something that's a bit past it.
Yes, yeah, and I think if I put it into a cellar, I'm not I'm not fabulously organised, so I'll forget about it, find it too late, and go, oh my goodness.
Now, I've brought you something from South Africa, which is the 2016 Scorpion from Sadi Family Vineyard. So this is Ibn Sadi, and I brought this really just because of the connection that your ancestors had. Walter and Alfred selling those South African wines on Oxford Street. So this is one of the great South African wines, I think, and it also proves that South African wines age. It's grown on beach sand over limestone right on the coast. You can see the boats 100 yards away from the vineyard, and it's sand and limestone, and it's a blend of Chenin Blanc with Palomino, obviously the great variety of sherry. So I thought I'd bring this along for you, just show how it ages. 2016.
Tim, this is just such a treat, and I haven't tasted it yet. I'm going to have a taste. Cheers.
I think that's bloody good. I mean, that's amazing. That's 8 years old. I mean, people think that New World wines don't age, but it's just, it does taste marine, sea breezes and all that kind of stuff, doesn't it?
Tim, it's absolutely beautiful. And you can taste the Palomino in there as well. You can. And it's so fresh. And so it's got salinity. It's so clean. It's exactly, I think that's a beautiful wine.
Well, that came from I've got more. So next time I see you, I'll open another one.
No, you will not. It's got, but it's got bags of energy. Amazing. So it's such a treat. And do you know what? I'm going in February to Scotland, and I'd love to pop in and
would you go and see him?
It's a must.
Let's do yours. I mean, this is a treat as well. You've brought along a Barbera d'Alba from Viberti called Bricco Airoli. Presumably that's a single vineyard Barolo, is it? Sorry, about Barolo. It's a Barbera, not a Barolo.
Yeah, but it's a single vineyard in Barolo that he plants Barbera in. Do you know? Do you know of this estate?
No, I don't.
So I've shipped wine from them for 15 years, run by a guy Claudio, who's my kind of age, and I love this wine. It's aged in oak, but it's got so much power and energy. And so much life to it, and I love Barbera. I think it's just such a. To be honest, I often struggle with Barolo. Yeah, but this is a really meaty, juicy Barbera that I think is.
And I think that's a good tip for people, is it? Because I think, as you said, some people find Nebbiolo, the grape of Barolo, and obviously Barbaresco, a bit tannic and austere, and it's often a good bet to buy their Barbera or their Dolcetto. You think about producers like Vaira or Conterno. I often buy the Conterno Barberas because they're brilliant and they age.
And they really age. So he makes two. He makes a Barbera Gemello, which is very light, charming, fruity, lovely wine. Yeah. And this, it's a 1 hectare plot in the middle of his best Barolo vineyard.
It's lovely.
It's really meaty and powerful. This, to be honest, it's still young. This would do.
And people can buy this from you because you sell wine from your website, don't you? You still got a few wines on there.
Lovely plug. Yes, we do.
Did you like that? Seamless plug for the website. Well, you got to plug your friend's website.
Exactly.
A quick question is which regions you think offer the best value for money? right now? If you were somebody who hasn't got a lot of money, where would you tell them to start to drink decent wine?
Well, I think Portugal and South Africa are two countries that I think are so, and particularly Swartland, where there's so much going on there that is fantastic. So I would, for both whites and reds, Portugal and South Africa would be my go-tos, because I think I'd
add Spain, maybe a bit of southern Italy, maybe.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, Tim, I know Spain is absolutely, you're all over that. But if I was to choose two, I think some of those beautiful, like Godellos, Bierzo is producing great, amazing stuff that I love.
And the worst value? Well, who do you think is offering the worst value?
Well, I think it's got to be France, but I still think they produce the best.
Yeah.
But if you want, if you've got 10 quid to spend and you want to do a really crap job, spend it in Bordeaux. Sorry, Gavin Quinner.
Apart from Gavin's wines, which are obviously brilliant. Gavin, if you're listening, we love your wines.
But it is the traditional, or Burgundy, it's the traditional areas, or Tuscany.
Yeah.
I think once we come out of there and into some of these new areas, we get a lot better bang for our bucks.
I think you're right. The final question is how you get away from wine. I mean, you're a runner. I don't know if you're still running. You cycle a bit, don't you? I mean, what else do you do with your increasingly small amounts of spare time?
I think I cycle and run and work, and I get away a bit. But honestly, Tim, I think I hit 50 and thought, gosh, I want to work less. I now think I want to work more. You and I would never have met if I hadn't have run this blinking marathon. Yeah. I'm just one of many of us in the wine trade who do our bit, and I'm lucky enough to have been noticed.
Yeah.
And I sort of think that this is such an amazing opportunity now to communicate to a whole new audience in however way we manage to do it. That I think this is so exciting. So I'm all in.
You're going to work harder.
Yeah, I think, but it's fun, isn't it?
I think work when you're having fun is easy, isn't it?
Yeah, and we meet, Tim, you'll know better than I do, but we meet great people and very passionate people who generally open a bottle and cook a meal, and it's super fun. And so, that's why we've got to keep running and buying.
Exactly. Tom, it's been brilliant talking to you. Looking forward to catching up soon for another bottle of wine. Look at your website, which is tomgilbey.com, isn't it? And your Instagram, which is also Tom. Are you called the wine guy on there, or are you called Tom Gilbey?
I'm just called Tom Gilbey Wine. Tom
Gilbey Wine. Check out the videos because they're brilliant and they're a lot of fun. Pleasure talking to you, and I'll see you very soon. See you.
And thank you so very much.
Well, that was a lot of fun. And do catch up with Tom's posts online, as he has a very refreshing way of communicating about wine. Next week on Cork Talk, my guest is Roman Roth from Volfa Estate on Long Island. Join me then. Thanks for listening to Cork Talk. If you want to read more reports, articles and tasting notes by me, go to my website, timatkin.com. You can also follow me on Twitter @TimAtkin and on Instagram @TimAtkinMW. See you next week.